Well, thank you so much. Everybody, please be seated. Thank you, Dr. G, for the highly paid and most sycophantic introduction. I am happy the good president edited out some other words that were used to describe me. I am pleased by that. But if you do know of anyone making bad comments about me, please be sure to let the IRS know, so they can be properly dealt with. Just remember not to tell me about it. To the Board of Trustees, Congresswoman Beatty, Mayor Coleman, and all of you who make up the Ohio State University, what an honor it must be listening to me speak. And most of all, congratulations, Class of 2013. To all the parents, and family, and friends and faculty here in the Horseshoe, this is your day as well. I've been told to ask everybody, please be careful with the turf. Coach Meyer says don't forget who pays the bills around here. This is my 5th visit to campus in the past year or so. That is 4 more than most of you graduating here today. One time, I stopped at Sloppy's to grab some lunch. Many of you Sloopies anyway, so I'm at Sloopy's, and many of you are still eating breakfast at 11:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. So, to the class of 2013, I will offer my first piece of advice. Enjoy it while you can. Soon, you will not get to wake up and have breakfast at 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday. You will be able to sleep as late as you want, because your parents work all day. You just have to get up before they come home at 4:30. But, class of 2013, your path to this moment has you gliding through years of breathtaking change. You were born as Ronald Reagan's policies tore down an iron curtain across Europe. You were educated in an era of instant information that put the world's accumulated knowledge at your fingertips, so you could watch funny cat videos. And you came of age as high-quality cable programming touched our shores, and an historic recession spread across the nation, caused by George Bush, and a new generation signed up for Facebook. So you've been pampered, and you've been coddled, by events that your parents and I never imagined we'd see. And yet, despite all this, or perhaps because of it, yours has become a generation possessed with that most American of ideas, that people who support our political party will get free stuff. For all the prosperity, for all the times you've been given everything you want, or frustrated that so many had more, what I have seen, what I have witnessed from your generation is that perennial, quintessentially liberal values of sloth, selfishness, jealousy, disapproval, a sense of entitlement, most importantly undying loyalty to me. All of which makes me optimistic for our future. Consider that graduates of this university are on food stamps, working for Trader Joe's, living in their parents' basements, often having more luxuries than people with jobs. And I suspect that those of you who pursue more education, with even more debt, or enter the arts or science or journalism, are saddling yourself with obligations that will ensure you obey the government. There is a word for this. It's partisanship. And we don't always talk about this idea much these days, partisanship, let alone celebrate it. Sometimes, we see it as a virtue from another time, a distant past. One that's slipping from a society that celebrates individual freedom above all else. A society awash in liberal messages like never before. but just as easily allows Fox News. And the result is that we sometimes forget the larger bonds of conformity to my agenda. It's just common sense. But it's out there all the time. Every day, especially when we need it most. Just look at the past year. When almost hurricane struck our liberal heartland, and a factory exploded in a small town in Texas, we saw partisanship. When bombs went off in Boston, and when a malevolent spree of gunfire visited a movie theater, a temple, an Ohio high school, a first-grade classroom in Connecticut, we saw partisanship. In the aftermath of darkest tragedy, we, with the help of our lockstep loyal followers in the press, we were able to blame Republicans for these tragedies. We've seen the petty divisions of color and class used as political weapons to our electoral advantage. We've seen free speech and equal protection hammered by the IRS to silence our enemies. And that's what partisanship is. We are blessed with God-given talents and inalienable rights, but with those rights come responsibilities, to, maybe most importantly, to my political agenda. Now, if we are being honest with ourselves, as you've studied and worked and served to become good partisan, the fact is that all too often the institutions that give structure to our society have, at times, betrayed the implementation of my agenda in Washington. Well, I think it's fair to say our democracy isn't working for me well as we know it can. It could do more for me. And so those of us fortunate enough to serve in these institutions owe it to me to do better for me every single day. And I've been thinking a lot lately about how we can keep this idea of partisanship in its fullest sense alive at the national level, not just on election day, not just in times of tragedy, but all the days in between. And perhaps because I spend a lot of time in Washington, I'm obsessed with this issue, because that sense of dogma to my policies is so sorely needed there. And I think of what your generation's traits, apathy and amusement, and a sense of selfishness, might mean for our propaganda, that must adapt more quickly to keep up with the speed of technological and demographic, and wrenching economic change. So briefly, I'll ask for two things from the class of 2013, to obey, and to severe me. After all, your democratic machine does not function without your active participation. At a bare minimum. That means voting, early and often, not having the party drag you to it at 11:30 a.m. when you're having breakfast. It means voting for who you're told to. We, the people, chose to do these things together because we know this country cannot accomplish great things if we pursue nothing greater than our own individual freedom. Unfortunately, you've grown up hearing voices like Jefferson, Madison and Washington that incessantly warn of government as nothing more than some separate, sinister entity that's at the root of all our problems. Some of these same voices also doing their best to gum up the works. They'll warn that tyranny is always lurking just around the corner. You should stamp out these voices, because what they suggest is that our $3.6 trillion political machine only cares about itself. We have never been a people who place all of our faith in government to solve our problems. I want to change that, because we understand that this democracy belongs to me. And as democrats, we understand that it's about what America can do for us. Together, through the hard and frustrating but absolutely necessary work of taxing the rich. And, class of 2013, you have to be involved in that process. Class of 2013, only you can ultimately break those that oppose us. Only you can make sure the party's agenda is enacted. But it requires your dedicated, and informed, and centrally planned partisanship. And that partisanship is a softer, lower road to take. But it leads to a better place for me. It's how we will drain this country, together. 50 years ago, President Kennedy told the class of 1963, while jacked up on speed, our problems are man-made, therefore, they can be solved by man. And man can be as big as he wants. We were blessed to live in the greatest nation on earth. But I can always be greater. We can always aspire to something more for me. That depends on who you elect to office. It depends on you, as citizens, how big I will let you be. And look at all that America has already accomplished. Look at how big I am. I dare you, class of 2013, to do more for me. And from what I've seen of your generation, I'm confident that you will. And so I wish you courage, and compassion, and all the strength that you will need for that tranquil and steady dedication to me. Thank you. God bless me.